Boyfriend caused drama, mocking gay cousin's friend. He'd sneer, disgusting. Stranger then exposed his secret. He's just like him. His awful obsession to prove he wasn't like them made sense. Imagine discovering the person you loved wasn't just lying to you, but was using your entire relationship as a desperate, cruel disguise. That's the chilling reality I stumbled into, and it ripped my world apart. Our story began 2 years ago, amidst the vibrant chaos of a friend's birthday party, where the air hummed with excitement and possibility. Caleb, with his easy charm and dazzling smile, walked into my life, promising a future I desperately wanted to believe in. He had this big, ambitious job in advertising, always talking about running his own company, making grand plans. And I believed him. Why wouldn't I? He made me feel like the only woman in the room. Caleb came from a huge, close-knit extended family, and they gathered almost every month. His cousin, Chloe, quickly became my favorite person at these events. She was so warm, so welcoming, always making sure I felt like part of their tribe. Chloe had a best friend, Daniel, who was practically family himself. Daniel was smart, successful, also in advertising, and he'd known Chloe since college. Everyone treated him like their own. Daniel was openly gay, and he had a boyfriend, Lucas, who occasionally joined the bigger family events. They seemed genuinely happy, a beautiful thing to witness. Caleb, however, didn't seem to agree. The first time I really noticed it was at a summer cookout. Daniel was telling a story about a trip he and Lucas took to visit Lucas's parents. Caleb cut him off, loudly, asking if they shared a bed at the parents' house or if they had to pretend to be roommates. He laughed at his own comment, a harsh, solitary sound, because no one else found it funny. Daniel just looked at him for a moment, then calmly continued his story. I remember thinking it was strange, a bit out of line, but I tried to brush it off as a one-off. It wasn't a one-off. It became a pattern. At Thanksgiving, Caleb made pointed comments about Daniel's clothes being too fitted. At Christmas, he asked Daniel if he was the man or the woman in his relationship. At Chloe's birthday, he actually asked Daniel how many guys he'd been with before settling down. The questions were always intrusive, always fixated on Daniel's sexuality. And it was only Daniel. He never grilled Chloe about her dating life, never critiqued anyone else's appearance or relationships. Just Daniel. Always Daniel. I talked to Caleb about it multiple times. I told him his comments were inappropriate, that Daniel deserved respect, that there was no reason to be so focused on someone else's personal life. His response was always the same. He was just curious. Daniel put his lifestyle out there, so it was fair game. He claimed he didn't understand why everyone was so sensitive and insisted he wasn't homophobic, just asking normal questions. But they didn't feel normal. They felt obsessive. I started watching Caleb more closely whenever Daniel was around. And then I saw it. I saw how Caleb's eyes would follow Daniel across the room. How he always seemed to position himself near Daniel at gatherings, even as he mocked him. How he'd bring up Daniel in conversations even when Daniel wasn't there, and how he knew details about Daniel's life that you'd only know if you were paying very, very close attention. Easter dinner. That's when something truly shifted. Daniel mentioned he was training for a marathon. Caleb immediately asked if Lucas was running it too. Daniel said yes. Caleb pressed, "Do you train together every morning?" Daniel replied, "Sometimes." Then Caleb, with a smirk, asked, "What do you wear when you run?" Daniel paused, his expression hardening, and asked why that mattered. Caleb mumbled something about just making conversation, but Chloe, bless her, cut him off. "Caleb, stop being weird," she snapped. His face went beet red. He didn't say another word for the rest of dinner. That night, the drive home was silent. I asked if he was okay. "Fine," he grunted. "Why do you always focus on Daniel so much?" I pressed. He denied it, but I pushed back. "You clearly do. You ask Daniel more questions than anyone else in your family. You seem fixated." He slammed on the brakes, pulling the car over to the side of the road. "Stop analyzing me," he yelled. "There's nothing to analyze." I'm just a normal guy who finds Daniel's lifestyle confusing. That's allowed. You're making something out of nothing. I dropped it. He was getting angry and I didn't want to fight. But I couldn't stop thinking about it. 3 weeks later, I came home early from work, feeling a little under the weather. Caleb's car was in the driveway, which was odd. He should have been at the office. I walked inside and heard voices coming from the bedroom. I thought maybe he had the TV on. He did not. I opened the bedroom door and there he was, with someone. A man I didn't recognize. They both froze, caught mid-act. Caleb started talking immediately. It's not what it looks like, he babbled. I can explain. This is the first time. I don't know what happened. I'm confused. I'm so sorry. I didn't say anything. I just stood there, staring. And in that horrifying, crystal clear moment, everything clicked. Every intrusive question. Every obsessive comment about Daniel's relationship, Daniel's body, Daniel's life. Caleb wasn't disgusted by Daniel. He was fascinated. He was attracted. I stood frozen in the doorway while Caleb's desperate explanations tumbled over each other. The other man, grabbing his clothes, pushed past me without a glance. Seconds later, I heard the front door slam. Caleb was crying now, reaching for me. I instinctively stepped backward into the hallway, unable to let him touch me. My body moved on its own, my brain still trying to catch up to the scene burned into my memory. Caleb followed, his voice growing louder, begging me to wait. I grabbed my purse from the hook by the door. My keys were on the kitchen counter. He was right behind me as I walked to get them. It didn't mean anything, he cried. I'm confused. This was the first time. I love you. We can work through this. I said nothing. If I opened my mouth, I might scream and never stop. I walked out the front door, leaving him standing in the kitchen, calling my name. I got in my car, locked the doors, and drove away, my hands shaking on the steering wheel the entire way to Sophia's house across town. I sat in her driveway for 20 minutes, gathering the courage to get out. My legs felt like jelly when I finally stood up. When I knocked, Sophia opened the door, and her expression changed instantly when she saw my face. She pulled me inside without a word. We sat on her couch, and the words, broken and raw, finally spilled out. Sophia listened silently, completely present. When I finished, she simply said, "You're staying here as long as you need to." She led me to her guest room, bringing me water and tissues. That night, I lay awake in the unfamiliar bed, replaying every family gathering, every interaction with this new, terrible understanding. Every invasive question Caleb asked Daniel about Lucas. Every comment about Daniel's clothes. Every time Caleb positioned himself near Daniel while mocking him. It was all attraction, twisted into cruelty. Caleb was obsessed with Daniel because he wanted to be Daniel, or he wanted Daniel, or he hated himself for wanting any of it. The realization made me feel physically ill. 2 years of my life, spent with someone who was lying about everything. My phone started buzzing. Texts from Caleb, one after another. Apologies. I didn't mean for this to happen. I've been confused about my sexuality for a long time. More texts, promising therapy, promising we could work through it. Then the tone shifted. You're overreacting. You should have stayed to talk instead of running away. The next morning, more messages, cycling through apologies, anger, desperate pleas. Sophia watched me read them at breakfast. She looked at me, "You don't owe him any response at all." But part of me still wanted to understand how I missed something this massive. How did I not see that every comment about Daniel was really about himself? 3 days passed, my phone still filling up with his messages. He needed to talk about the apartment, about our shared life. I finally agreed to meet him at a coffee shop. We had practical things to deal with. For days after I left, I drove to the coffee shop near our apartment. Caleb was already there, looking terrible, dark circles under his eyes like bruises. He launched into a speech the moment I sat down, about struggling with his sexuality for years, how he thought being with me would fix him. The words made me sick to my stomach. Our entire relationship. It was his failed conversion therapy. I wasn't a girlfriend. I was a shield. We started arguing about the apartment lease, our voices rising. Other customers stared. He said he couldn't afford the place alone. I said I couldn't either, but I refused to live with him one more night. He suggested breaking the lease, but the penalty was thousands of dollars. Neither of us had that kind of money. We left without solving a thing. More texts that night. Caleb changed his story. Claimed what I saw wasn't what it looked like. Said the guy was just a friend. Nothing actually happened. Said I jumped to conclusions. I screenshot his previous texts, the ones where he admitted everything, and sent them back. No other comment. Then I blocked his number. A week after the discovery, my phone rang. It was Chloe. Her voice was careful, sad. Caleb had told his family we broke up, but not why. She wanted to check on me because we'd become friends. I froze, unsure how much to reveal. Then I realized she deserved to know why her cousin's ex-girlfriend might not be attending family events anymore. I told Chloe the truth. I explained how Caleb's obsessive behavior toward Daniel now made horrifying, chilling sense. There was a long silence. Then Chloe said she and Daniel had talked about Caleb's fixation before. They'd wondered if it was repressed attraction showing up as hostility. She apologized for not saying something sooner. I told her it wasn't her responsibility to decode her cousin's sexuality issues. But I couldn't help but wonder. What if someone had said something? Would I have believed them? Or would I have defended Caleb like I always did? What did I miss when I was too busy loving him to notice he was busy hating himself? That night at Sophia's, I stayed up late, scrolling through articles about internalized homophobia. The screen light hurt my eyes, but I kept reading, desperate to understand how someone could spend 2 years attacking another person for being what they secretly were. The psychology articles explain projection, self-hatred, the way people sometimes destroy in others what they cannot accept in themselves. One article described exactly what I watched Caleb do at every family gathering. People with internalized homophobia often fixate on openly gay individuals and use cruelty to create distance from their own desires. They ask invasive questions to prove to themselves and everyone watching that they are nothing like the person they cannot stop thinking about. They mock and belittle because acceptance would mean facing the truth about themselves. I read about men who tormented gay coworkers before finally coming out, husbands who cheated on their wives with men while publicly opposing gay rights. The specific, dark obsession that comes from wanting something you've been taught to hate. Understanding it didn't make me feel better. Knowing why Caleb did what he did didn't erase the 2 years I spent watching him torture Daniel. It didn't change the fact that I was his disguise. 2 weeks after I left, I texted Caleb, telling him I was coming to get my things and that he needed to be at work. He responded immediately, asking if we could talk. I didn't answer. Sophia drove me to the apartment on a Tuesday afternoon. Her car idled in the parking lot while I unlocked the door with shaking hands. The apartment smelled like him. I walked quickly to the bedroom, pulling clothes from the closet, my hands moving fast, shoving things into garbage bags. I was halfway through when I noticed a shoebox on Caleb's side of the top shelf, hidden behind his winter coats. A spot I never would have seen if I wasn't clearing everything out. I pulled it down. It was light. I lifted the lid and my stomach dropped. Inside were printed photographs. Not digital files on a phone, but actual printed photos, like someone took the time to have them developed. I picked up the first one. Daniel at a family barbecue last summer, laughing at something Chloe said. The photo was zoomed in on his face. I flipped to the next. Daniel at Christmas, wearing a blue sweater. The next showed Daniel and Lucas together, but Lucas's face was cut off. Daniel filled most of the photo. I kept flipping. Daniel at Easter dinner. Daniel at Chloe's birthday party. Daniel standing by the food table. Daniel talking to someone outside the frame. Some photos included Caleb, next to Daniel or in the background, but most focused solely on Daniel. There were at least 30 of them. My hands shook. This wasn't casual interest. This wasn't even the obsession I already knew about. This was something darker, deeper. This was someone who couldn't stop looking. Someone who printed physical copies to keep, to look at when he was alone. Someone so fixated he created a secret collection. I sat down hard on the bedroom floor, still clutching the photos. Sophia called from the living room, asking if I was okay. I couldn't answer. I stared at the images scattered around me, trying to process what kind of person does this. What kind of person spends 2 years mocking someone while secretly collecting photos of them? What kind of person keeps a hidden box of another man's face while sleeping next to their girlfriend every night? My phone buzzed. It was Michael, Caleb's brother. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. Michael's voice sounded tired, sad. He said he heard what happened from Chloe. He wanted to apologize for his brother's behavior. Sorry I got caught up in Caleb's issues. Then he said something that made me freeze. He suspected Caleb was gay since they were teenagers. Caleb violently denied it whenever anyone came close to suggesting it. Their father made comments about men needing to be tough, and Caleb took those comments to heart. Michael said he watched Caleb build this whole fake version of himself, and there was nothing he could do. I heard a woman's voice in the background. Michael said Emily wanted to talk. His wife got on the phone, her voice gentle. She said they had a guest room if I needed somewhere more permanent than Sophia's couch. She said I shouldn't have to deal with this alone. And then, the words that finally broke me. Neil's family wants you to know that what he did is not your fault. I started crying, sitting on that bedroom floor, surrounded by photos of Daniel. I cried because Caleb's family was being kinder to me than Caleb ever was. I cried because I wasted 2 years on someone who was using me. I cried because I should have seen this coming and I didn't. Emily stayed on the phone until I stopped. She gave me their address, told me the door was open whenever I needed it. I hung up, gathered the photos back into the box, and took it with me when I left. 3 days later, I sat in my car outside the apartment, just looking at the building where I thought I was building a life. I was mourning something, but it wasn't the relationship I lost. It was the relationship I thought I had. Every memory felt contaminated now. Was he thinking of Daniel when he kissed me? Was he performing straightness at every family gathering to convince himself as much as everyone else? Did he ever actually want me? Or was I just the most convincing disguise he could find? The grief sat heavy in my chest, but it wasn't grief for Caleb. It was grief for 2 wasted years living inside someone else's lie. It was grief for the version of myself who believed him when he said he loved me. It was grief for all the moments I thought were real, but were just part of his performance. I started the car and drove away. That night at Sophia's, I stared at the shoebox on the dresser in the guest room. I kept thinking about Daniel. He deserved to know about the photos. He deserved to know that Caleb's behavior went beyond rude questions at family dinners. But I didn't want to burden him, or make him feel like he needed to comfort me. Sophia, always wise, said, Daniel has a right to know someone was essentially stalking him. Keeping it secret protects Caleb, not Daniel. Part of me worried it would sound like I was making Caleb's issues about me, centering myself in something that was really about his struggle with being gay. I decided to call Chloe first. The next afternoon, Caleb showed up at Sophia's house. I was in the guest room when I heard the doorbell and my whole body went cold. I watched from behind the curtain as Sophia opened the door. I couldn't hear what Caleb said, but I saw him gesturing, trying to look past Sophia into the house. Sophia stood firm, blocking him, then pointed toward the street. Caleb's voice grew louder. I could hear him now, shouting that he needed to talk to me, that he'd figured himself out, and wanted to explain everything properly. Sophia pulled out her phone. Caleb saw it, took a step back, then looked up at the window where I was standing. I moved away from the curtain. A minute later, I heard his car start. I texted him from my phone. We have nothing to discuss beyond apartment logistics. You need to stop coming to places I'm staying. If you show up again, I will call the police myself. He didn't respond. 2 weeks later, I moved into a studio apartment after paying that lease penalty. The place is smaller than any bedroom I've ever had, but it's mine. No shared memories contaminating every corner. I unpack slowly, putting dishes in cabinets, hanging clothes in a closet that holds only my things. The one window looks out at a parking lot, but the light that comes in feels clean and honest. I scheduled my first therapy appointment for a Tuesday morning. The office smelled like lavender, with soft, mismatched chairs. She asked me what brought me in, and I explained about finding Caleb with another man, realizing our entire relationship was his hiding place. She listened, without interrupting, and when I finished, She asked what I was feeling right now. I told her I kept replaying memories, trying to figure out what I missed, blaming myself for not seeing signs that seemed so clear now. She wrote something in her notebook, then looked at me directly. Caleb spent years actively lying to everyone, including himself, she said. You are living inside a performance designed specifically to be believable. You cannot blame yourself for trusting someone you loved when they were working that hard to deceive you. The words sat heavy in the room. I realized I'd been carrying guilt that didn't belong to me. We talked for 50 minutes, and when I left, I felt slightly less like I'd failed some test I didn't know I was taking. 3 months pass in a rhythm of work, therapy, and learning to live alone. One Saturday afternoon, I went to a bookstore, looking for something to read that had nothing to do with relationships or self-help. I was standing in the mystery section when I heard someone say my name. I turned. Lucas stood 2 feet away, holding a book about architecture. We both froze for a second, then he smiled carefully. We made awkward small talk about books and the weather. Neither of us mentioned Caleb. Finally, I asked how Daniel was doing. Lucas said he was fine, but learning about the photos had unsettled him more than he let on. I nodded, starting to apologize, but Lucas stopped me. He said he was sorry for what I went through. He said discovering your partner has a secret life is hard, no matter what that secret is. He couldn't imagine how it felt to realize the person I thought I knew was someone completely different. His kindness caught me off guard. I was Caleb's ex-girlfriend, part of this whole mess, even if I hadn't known it. And Lucas was being gentle with me anyway. My eyes started burning. I blinked fast, but tears came anyway. Lucas, pretending not to notice, talked about a book he thought I might like until I could breathe normally again. We said goodbye, and I watched him walk toward the checkout counter before going back to looking at mysteries I wouldn't remember later. I think about red flags constantly now. Caleb always needed to prove how masculine he was. He made jokes about guys who dressed well. He refused to watch any movie with gay characters. He got uncomfortable anytime someone brought up anything related to being gay, unless he was the one mocking it. He fixated on Daniel in a way I told myself was just rude behavior from someone who didn't understand. I rationalized everything because I loved him and I wanted to believe what he told me. My therapist says I need to forgive myself for believing someone when they lied. She says Caleb claimed to be something he wasn't and built an entire life around that lie. She says I wasn't stupid for trusting him. She says he was very good at hiding. I'm learning to accept that his whole performance wasn't about me. I was just there, living my life, while he used me as proof he was straight. The anger comes and goes, but mostly, I feel sad for all the time we both lost. 6 months after I walked out of that bedroom, I sit in my studio apartment, drinking coffee and looking at the parking lot outside my window. The life I have now is smaller than what I thought I was building with Caleb. I don't have his big plans or his confidence about the future. I have a quiet apartment, a job, and weekly therapy appointments. Some days, I still feel angry about the years he took while hiding behind me. Some days, I feel sad about the relationship I thought we had. But I'm also learning things I didn't know before. I'm learning that I deserve someone who knows themselves. I'm learning that I deserve honesty, even when the truth is hard. I'm learning that Caleb's problems were never about me. I was just someone who got hurt while he fought with himself. The grief is real, but so is the relief of not living inside someone else's lie anymore. This whole experience shattered my perception of honesty and what it means to truly know someone. If you've ever felt like you were just a prop in someone else's performance, or if you've seen similar patterns, I'd really appreciate you sharing your thoughts and experiences in the comments below. How do you move forward from a lie this deep?